Great, thanks for the introduction. So I'm Mascha from the Berner University of Applied Sciences. I'm a professor for data engineering, and I will talk about our work towards a fairness score for machine learning training data today. In our work, we are primarily focusing on text-based training data. So that's why I'm here at the NLP track. But of course, the same points that we're going to discuss now apply for other materials such as video or audio training data. So when we are using machine learning, we have training data, we build up the model, and typically we use that model then for smart decision making. Now, depending on your application, on the types of decisions that you're going to make, there is a potential that these decisions might not be fair. But how to measure that? How to find out whether your model is biased or the training data on which your model is based on is biased? And what are the consequences about it? So we could say humans are biased too, right? But the difference here is with biased automated decision making is that it might always be biased in the same way when the algorithm and the training data of this software was biased in one direction. And as well, the impact it has might be way larger than a biased person, because the number of decisions taken by a specific software is typically way larger than the number of decisions taken by one single person with their bias. So there are different forms of bias that have been discovered by the research. So we heard before, many people are using Wikipedia as a training set for different kinds of application. So what if I told you that Wikipedia has been proven biased? So different research has shown that there is, for example, a bias towards gender in Wikipedia. So on one side, the articles, for example, regarding personal biographies are a very different number for women and for men. So there are way more men that are represented in Wikipedia. And on the other hand, the way that women and men are represented is different. So the research has shown that women are often described because of their relationships or their family status, whereas men are described by different factors, as for example, their work. So let's say you have this model that you have built, for example, upon Wikipedia, which knows as a reality that 20% of the population only are women, and that their main concern is, for example, relationships. So this is what your model will learn. So depending on the decision that are being made upon this model, of course, this introduces a bias in the decision making. Now, this is one example what we know of. So there has been research analyzing Wikipedia and showing this kind of bias that we have there. But of course, there are different training sets, different corpora, where we have not analyzed yet, so where we maybe are not sure if there is a bias in there. This does not only apply to text. So as we see in the picture on the right, we see two different brides for a wedding. So this can also be applied, this kind of bias can also happen in image classification. So depending on the training data that has been used for image classification, it might be that we have a cultural bias. So it could be that if a system was only trained on images of the Western culture, that only the bride on the left with the typical white dress might be recognized as a bride, whereas other brides from different cultures might not be recognized. So depending where you are going to use this software, whether it's used internationally or not, this might be a problem. There are several forms of bias depending on the type of data that we have. So we can have a bias towards a cultural bias, a gender bias, a bias towards the origin, the religion, or even the socioeconomic background. The problem when trying to develop a fairness score for training data is that we have a lot of different dimensions. So one key problem is that it's hard to find a global definition of what is fairness. Fairness depends on, can be very individual. So different people might have a different opinion of fairness. In different regions of the world or different cultures, fairness might have a different meaning. And the other, we also have a number of stakeholders. So we have the business point of view, so that even if we want to have fairness, we still need to be efficient enough to reach the goals that are there. And of course, we have the different types of bias. So the different types of bias that could appear, and the different types of training data, meaning we have text, we have audio, we might as well have images or video, and so on. So there are many different dimensions to consider when thinking about fairness in training data. Another very important aspect that we have when talking about such a fairness score is the transparency. Transparency on one side regards the algorithm to determine whether something is fair. Because if this algorithm is not public and available to everybody to approve and review, the algorithm for the fairness score itself wouldn't be fair. Because of the lack of the global definition of what is fairness, it's a point that needs to be open to the discussion. So the public needs to get involved in this question and sort of find in some way an agreement on what is fair, what do we expect from our society of the future. So what do we consider as fairness as a community? So it's not a decision that one company or one organization can make. It's something that is the moral of our society that needs to be decided together. The second aspect for transparency is that once we are able to measure such a fairness score for training data, what do we do with the results? So on one side, we need to create awareness and transparency for what are the biases in our training data. Because it will be hard to say this training set is without a bias. It's a very hard problem. So what is the deal we can make is that we say, okay, we have this training set. We know these are the bias or the unfairness we expect from this training set, and we handle it in some way. What the way is can be different. It depends on the software that we are producing, on what decisions are we making with that software, and what we are going to use it for. But what we need is transparency on the potential bias that might be there, and awareness for it. So to be able to take decisions based on that. So I will be here also in the coffee break. I'm very happy to answer your questions, discuss your ideas or your inputs regarding this topic. And I hope it helped a bit to raise the awareness about fairness in machine learning. Thank you.